He left us to starve. Now I decide if he lives or dies. I was 7 the day my father disappeared. It was a Tuesday morning in rural Pennsylvania, just after sunrise. The dew was still clinging to the porch railing, and my cereal was getting soggy on the kitchen table. Mom was upstairs folding laundry. I remember the blue shirt she held when the screen door creaked. I heard the engine before I saw him. Our old silver Ford Taurus idled quietly in the gravel driveway. My dad, Robert Reed, had packed 2 duffel bags. He wasn't in a rush, but he moved with purpose, like someone doing something they'd already rehearsed 1,000 times in their head. I stepped onto the porch in my Batman pajamas. He didn't notice me at first, or maybe he did, and he didn't care. But when he finally looked up, his eyes didn't say goodbye. They said nothing at all. "Where are you going?" I asked, voice cracking. He didn't answer. Instead, he zipped his jacket, adjusted the watch on his wrist, and muttered something about needing time and things changing. Then he stepped into the car, started the engine, and backed out slowly, like he wasn't leaving forever. But I knew. Even at 7, I knew. I ran barefoot across the yard, yelling for him to stop. My mom came running out just in time to see the car's taillights disappear around the bend near the cornfield. She dropped the blue shirt. I think she screamed. I think I did too. But mostly, I remember the silence afterward, the kind that follows a gunshot, the kind that settles when something permanent just happened. Mom tried her best. She took a second job at the diner off Route 11, worked nights as a cleaner at the community center. She was tired all the time. Her hair grayed faster than it should have. And on the worst nights, she cried in the bathtub when she thought I couldn't hear. We told people he died. It was easier, less embarrassing than saying he just left. Years passed. I grew up on scholarships, hand-me-downs, and the weight of watching my mom pretend she was okay. I promised myself 2 things. I would never end up like him. I would make sure the world remembered who left whom. That promise turned into ambition. By the time I was 28, I had clawed my way into a 6-figure career in real estate finance in Manhattan. I had a corner office in Midtown, a closet full of tailored suits, and a fiancée named Julia, who said I looked like I had everything under control. But no, one knew that every success of mine came from a place of rage. No one knew I still saw his face every time I passed a man abandoning his child on the subway. No one knew the quiet fury I carried like a loaded gun. Then, on a Tuesday morning, exactly 20 years later, an envelope showed up on my desk. No return address, just my name written in clean, slanted cursive, Ethan Reed. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No note, just a name and address. Robert Reed, St. Mark's Transitional Shelter, Philadelphia, PA. And under it, one line, "He's dying. He's asking for you." I stared at that piece of paper for what felt like an hour, not because I didn't believe it, but because I'd always known this day might come. And I didn't know what I wanted more, to forgive him, or to be the one who decided whether he got forgiven at all. The letter sat on my desk for 3 days. I didn't tell Julia. I didn't tell anyone. Each morning, I poured my coffee, checked the markets, answered emails, like the world hadn't just dropped a ghost on my doorstep. But every time I tried to move on, I'd glance at the envelope, and that one line would whisper back to me, "He's dying. He's asking for you." I thought about burning it. I thought about driving to Philly just to stand outside that shelter and turn around without going in. But what kept me frozen was this. I didn't know what I wanted him to say. Would I be satisfied with an apology? Would I believe him if he gave one? Or would I spit it back in his face like the apology came 20 years too late? That Friday, I opened the drawer in my desk and pulled out an old shoebox I hadn't touched since college. Inside were folded pieces of paper, dozens of them, yellowed with time, torn from spiral notebooks. They were letters I wrote to my father. Letters I never sent. The first one was scrawled in a second grader's handwriting. Dear Dad, today was my school play. I was a tree. Mommy said I looked handsome. Another, dated 3 years later. Dear Dad, I made the honor roll. I think you would have liked that. Maybe not. I don't know. And one from high school. Dear Dad, prom was last night. I didn't go. I worked a double shift instead. By the time I got to the last one, my hands were shaking. It wasn't even a letter. Just one sentence. If I ever see you again, I won't be a boy. The next morning, I took a train to Philadelphia. It rained the whole way. The kind of rain that made you feel like the sky was being emptied just to clear space for something heavier. I checked into a cheap hotel a few blocks from the shelter. I didn't know if I'd go in yet. I just wanted to see it, to prove to myself it was real. When I walked past St. Mark's, I saw a line of people wrapped in blankets, waiting for coffee and canned soup. I asked the intake volunteer about Robert Reed. She looked down a list, then back up at me. He's in room 4C, she said. Stage 3 liver disease. Doesn't talk much. You family? I swallowed hard. Yeah, I said. I guess I am. I didn't go in that day. Instead, I stood across the street and stared up at the 4th floor window. Was he behind it? Was he thinking about me? Was he still pretending he hadn't done what he did? Back in the hotel, I stared at myself in the bathroom mirror. I looked nothing like him. Everyone said I had my mother's eyes, her fire, her grit. But when I squared my shoulders or tilted my jaw just so, I saw his shadow, and it made my stomach turn. That night, I dreamed I was 7 again, standing in the driveway, watching the Ford Taurus disappear into the trees. Only this time, I didn't run. This time, I turned and walked the other way. I went back the next morning. No more pacing across the street. No more standing in the rain, like some ghost waiting for a sign. I walked through the doors of St. Mark's Transitional Shelter like I belonged there. Like I wasn't the son of the man I was about to confront. The volunteer from yesterday recognized me. She nodded toward the stairs. Room 4C, she said again, softer this time. He's awake. The air changed as I climbed. Like each step pulled me further into a version of myself I'd buried. One built from anger, silence, and all the years I imagined this moment going differently. I knocked once, no answer. Then I opened the door. The room was small, barely enough space for the single bed, a nightstand, and a folding chair. The walls were yellowed, cracked in places. A cheap oscillating fan buzzed in the corner, doing nothing for the stale heat. And there he was, Robert Reed, my father. Older than I expected, but not in years, in weight. His skin hung off his bones like it had given up trying to keep him together. His hair was mostly gone. A grey patch clung to the back of his head like it was too stubborn to let go. He looked up slowly. His eyes met mine. They didn't widen, they didn't water, they just studied me, like I was someone he almost recognized but couldn't quite place. Ethan, he said. I didn't answer. I stepped inside, closed the door, and sat in the folding chair beside the bed. Didn't think you'd come, he croaked. His voice was dry gravel. I almost didn't, I said. He nodded faintly. You look like her. Linda. Same eyes. My jaw tensed at her name in his mouth. You don't get to say her name like that. He coughed, deep, hollow, then smiled. I figured you'd want answers. I leaned forward. No, I want the truth. He shifted under the thin hospital blanket. Truth's complicated. I laughed once. Short, cold. No, it's not. You left. That part's pretty clear. He looked away. You don't understand what it was like. No, I said. I understand exactly. You had a son and a wife, and you drove away without saying goodbye. That's not complex. That's cowardice." His hands trembled as he tried to sit up. "I was drowning. Debt. Pressure. Your mum, she made things hard. You made things impossible," I snapped. We sat in silence. He stared at the ceiling like he was trying to count regrets. "You know," he said finally, "I used to imagine this moment. You, walking in, telling me I was wrong. I thought I'd argue back, try to make you see my side. And I don't have the strength to lie anymore." That caught me off guard. He looked down at his hands, scarred, frail, fading. I ruined everything, and I kept ruining it. For years. New city, new job, another woman, another kid. My stomach dropped. "You have another kid?" I asked. He nodded. "A daughter. She's 20. I left her too." For a second, I didn't speak. Not because I was shocked, because I wasn't. He hadn't just left me. He was the kind of man who would do it again. "You didn't call me because you missed me," I said. "You called because you're alone." He didn't deny it. I stood up. He reached out, weakly, like a leaf in the wind. "Wait, please. Don't go." I stared at the door. I wanted to walk out. I wanted to leave him the way he left me. But I didn't. Not yet. Because now, I had the truth. And I wasn't done with it. I thought the hardest part would be seeing his face again. But it wasn't. It was sitting across from Natalie, listening to her piece together, half memories of a father who barely existed in her life, trying to connect a few years of bedtime stories and birthday parties to a man who vanished without a goodbye, and realizing she and I were just two chapters in the same tragic story. After our meeting, I stayed in touch with her. We texted. I sent her a photo of me and Mom from a beach trip in 2016. She replied with a selfie of her and Susan in matching aprons, holding burnt muffins. We were strangers, but bound by the same blood, same abandonment, same man. That weekend, I met with a lawyer in Center City named Miles Drayton, a partner at a boutique firm that specialized in family estate disputes. I wanted to know exactly what kind of power I had, should Robert die with me, listed as next of kin. Miles was efficient, calculated. "Your father has no assets," he said. "Not unless you count negative equity." "What about debt?" "Roughly $74,000 spread across personal loans, hospital bills, and 3 maxed-out credit cards. Creditors can't pursue you for those unless you sign anything." I raised an eyebrow. "But if I do sign something, then technically you'd have control over anything that remains. Medical decisions, final arrangements, access to his medical records, and possibly any open litigation involving his name." That was the moment I realized something. I could control how he was remembered. What went into his obituary? Who was listed in his records? What his final days looked like? I could bury him with dignity or silence. And the weight of that power, it felt sharp, clean, like a scalpel. I told Miles I'd think about it, but the truth was, I already knew. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about closure. Mine, Natalie's, Mom's, even his, if he deserved it. I returned to the shelter Monday morning, room 4C. He was sitting upright this time, thinner than ever, a tremor in his left hand as he drank apple juice from a styrofoam cup. "You came back," he said, surprised. "I did. I didn't think you would." "Yeah, well, neither did I." We talked for a while, about nothing really. Weather, sports. He asked if I still like comic books. "I haven't thought about them in years," I said. "You used to draw superheroes all the time, said you were going to be one." I didn't respond, because in a way, I had become one, but not the kind who wore capes, the kind who survived what someone else ran away from. Before I left, I looked him in the eye. "I met your daughter," I said. He blinked. "Natalie?" "Yeah, she's good, smart, funny." He nodded slowly. "I always hoped she'd be okay." I tilted my head. "You don't get to hope for that." He didn't argue. He just stared at the floor. And for once, I didn't feel sorry for him. I felt done. A week passed. I thought that after seeing him again, after staring down the man who ruined half a dozen lives and walked away like it was nothing, I'd feel lighter, but I didn't. Because that kind of weight doesn't just disappear. It morphs. It clings to the quiet corners of your day, the way you sip your coffee, the way you hesitate before answering a phone call. And most of all, it shows up in the dead of night, in dreams that feel too real and leave you staring at your ceiling at 3 a.m., sweating. It was during one of those nights that I got a call from St. Mark's. "Mr. Reed," the voice on the other end said, "your father left something for you, a box. He asked us to hold on to it in case anything happened." He hadn't died, not yet, but he was getting worse. Liver failure, the nurse said, jaundice, confusion. He'd been slipping in and out. "Should we hang on to it?" she asked. "I'll be there tomorrow," I said. The box was plain, cardboard, taped shut at the edges. Inside, there were 3 things: a stack of letters, all addressed to Ethan, a leather-bound notebook, old and cracked, a small handheld recorder. I started with the letters. They weren't dated, but the handwriting changed. Some were scrawled, others careful. Some angry, others soft. One read, "I was scared. That's not an excuse, but it's the truth. Your mum was stronger than me. She always was." Another, "I thought leaving would make your life easier. I thought I was the problem. I didn't want to ruin you." Bullshit. All of it. Because the truth? He left because it was easier. Because running from responsibility is cheaper than paying for your mistakes. Then I turned on the recorder. It clicked softly, the hiss of empty air giving way to his voice. Gravelly, but younger, healthier. "This is for Ethan. I don't know if you'll ever hear this, but if you do, I guess I didn't get to say things to your face." He paused. "I know what I did. I know how it looks, but there's more to it. Your mother, she pushed me out. She made it impossible." I stopped the recording. There it was again. Even now, on his deathbed, he was still lying, still pointing fingers, still rewriting history so he didn't have to look in the mirror. I picked up the notebook next. Inside were pages of budget notes, names I didn't recognize, dates, scribbled dreams of opening a mechanic shop in Richmond, poetry that read like confessions, rambling fragments of a man who never figured out how to hold on to anything. On the last page, in uneven handwriting, he'd written, "Do something with this mess, or don't. Either way, I'm sorry." That was the closest thing to an honest sentence he'd ever given me. But it wasn't enough, because sorry doesn't rebuild a childhood. Sorry doesn't bring back birthday parties, school plays, broken arms, scraped knees. Sorry doesn't get you your father back. I boxed it all up, taped it shut, and left it on the front desk of the shelter with a note that said, "For Natalie, let her decide if she wants to know who he was or who he wasn't." I didn't expect to hear from Natalie again so soon, but the day after I left the box for her at St. Mark's, she called me. Her voice was quiet, but steady. "I got the package." "I thought you should have it," I said. There was a long pause. Then she said, "I'm not sure if I want to open it." I didn't blame her. Some truths don't heal. Some just cut slower. That night, I walked the city without direction. Through South Philly, past shuttered shops and glowing windows, where strangers lived quieter lives. Every now and then, I'd catch my reflection in the glass. Still me, still Ethan. But something had shifted. For the first time, I wasn't chasing the pain anymore. I was holding it, looking at it, deciding what to do with it. I returned to the shelter one last time. Room 4C was darker now, quieter. Robert was asleep, mouth slightly open, the skin under his eyes sunken in. A nurse stood in the hallway. "He's not waking up much these days. If you have anything to say..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I pulled up the chair beside the bed and sat down. For a few minutes, I said nothing. Just listened to the mechanical rhythm of his breathing and the distant sounds of the shelter below. Plastic trays, coughs, muffled TV dialogue. Then I spoke. "You left when I was 7. You took away things I didn't even know I'd miss until years later, like how a kid's supposed to learn to tie a tie, or how to throw a punch, or how to stop hating himself for being angry all the time." His eyes didn't open. I kept going. "You blamed Mum, you blamed money, you blamed fear. But never once did you look at me and say, 'That was on me.'" I leaned in, just enough for him to hear. "Well, I'm saying it now. It was on you." I stood up, adjusted my coat, and turned toward the door. But before I left, I looked back at him. This hollow version of a man who used to haunt me. "I'm not like you," I said, "and that's not an accident. That's a choice I make every damn day." Then I walked out, and I didn't look back. That afternoon, I called Julia back in New York. She picked up on the first ring. "Hey," I said, my voice cracking just a little. "I think I'm ready to come home." She didn't ask questions. She just said, "I'll be here." On the train ride back, I opened my notebook and wrote 3 words across a blank page. "I forgive myself." Not him, me. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying his mistakes anymore. Back in New York, everything looked the same, but felt different. The apartment hadn't changed. Julia hadn't changed. The skyline still carved its signature across the sky like it always had. But I had. I wasn't carrying that invisible weight anymore, the ache of waiting for a man to show up who never would. I wasn't haunted by unanswered questions or teenage fantasies of confrontation. I'd done it. I'd seen him. I'd said my piece. Now, I had to figure out what came next. The call came 2 days later. It was Natalie. "I read some of the letters," she said, her voice steadier now, "and listened to the recording." I waited. "I'm not angry," she continued. "Mostly, I'm numb." "Yeah," I said. "That happens." Then, after a pause, she added, "I think I want to come to New York, just for a weekend. Is that okay?" I told her yes. She arrived that Friday. We met at a coffee shop in Soho. She wore a leather jacket and combat boots, a nose ring glinting in the light. She looked like a version of me that didn't grow up watching a single mother burn herself out to raise a kid alone. We walked and talked about college, about music, about how neither of us could ever eat eggs the same way since our dads always made them rubbery. We were different, but the pain we shared, that made us something else. Family. That night, I told her what I hadn't told anyone, not even Julia. "I used to imagine what I'd say to him," I said. "For years, I thought it would feel like fire, like justice. But when I saw him, it felt like watching a statue crumble." Natalie nodded slowly. "I didn't want him to die thinking he was a good man. But now I don't care what he thought. I care about who I become." Those words stuck with me, not just because they were true, but because she was right. Before she left, we stood on the Manhattan Bridge and watched the lights of the city ripple across the river. She turned to me. Promise me something. Anything. When he dies, we tell the truth. No sugarcoating. No fake obituary about how he loved his children dearly. He didn't earn that. I nodded. I promise. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't bitterness. It was a promise to never let silence protect the wrong people again. We wouldn't rewrite him into something he wasn't. We wouldn't lie to make other people comfortable. We'd speak the truth, even if it made people uncomfortable. Because that's what survivors do. We don't bury the pain. We honor it. 3 weeks passed. I didn't expect to hear from St. Mark's again. But life has a way of tying knots when you think the thread's already run out. A voicemail came in while I was at work. Short, clipped, compassionate. Mr. Reed, your father passed this morning at 4:17 a.m. He named you as his next of kin. If you'd like to collect his personal effects or make arrangements, please contact us within 7 days. I stared at the message. No tears came. Just silence. An oddly peaceful kind of silence. I didn't rush. I didn't book the first train or jump on a call. Instead, I sat with it. The finality. The strange quiet of it all. And then I called Natalie. She was already expecting it. Do you want to go? I asked. No, she said. But I will. For you. For us. We met again in Philadelphia 2 days later. St. Mark's was even grayer in the late autumn chill. Leaves stuck to the sidewalk like old regrets. Inside, they handed me a sealed envelope and a small plastic bag of belongings. A rusted wristwatch, the recorder, the leather notebook, and one handwritten envelope labeled simply, "To my children." Back at a diner down the street, Natalie and I sat in a booth with coffee growing cold between us. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of yellowed paper, lines slanted, the handwriting uneven. To Ethan and Natalie, if you're reading this, I'm already gone. I don't deserve much, maybe not even this note, but I wanted to say what I never said out loud. I failed you both, in different ways. I walked away when I should have stayed. I let fear guide me when love should have been stronger. I thought about you more than I'll ever admit, but I never earned the right to reach out again. You're not like me. That's your greatest gift. You are better, stronger, and I hope one day that means something. I'm sorry, not because I have to say it, but because I mean it. Robert, I handed the paper to Natalie. She read it in silence, then folded it and slid it back in the envelope. Still not enough, she said. No, I agreed, but it's done. We didn't plan a funeral. There was no service, no flowers, no slideshow of childhood memories that never happened. We had his body cremated and split the ashes. Natalie kept hers in a sealed tin on a shelf in her dorm. I scattered mine in the Delaware River, quietly, on a cloudy Wednesday morning. No eulogy, just peace. I stood there for a long time after, watching the water take what was left of the man who created me, but never raised me, not to mourn, but to mark the moment. The moment I finally felt free. Back in New York, life didn't pause. It didn't care that my father had died, or that I'd buried a lifetime of unanswered questions with his ashes. The city kept moving, but this time I moved with it, without the weight of his absence, pulling at my ribs. I wasn't the boy hoping for a call on my birthday anymore. I wasn't the teenager searching strange faces for some trace of the man who left. I was the man I built without him. At the office, I got back into the rhythm. Client meetings, strategy decks, long hours that no longer felt like a distraction, but a decision. At home, Julia noticed the change. "You're lighter," she said one night, curled beside me on the couch, "like something's finally settled." I didn't say anything. but I kissed her forehead and held her a little longer, because she was right. Natalie and I talked weekly now. We weren't trying to force a sibling bond, but we checked in, shared little things, laughed, even planned a weekend trip to Asheville that spring. We made a pact to build forward, not backward, to remember him, sure, but not to define ourselves by him, not anymore. One rainy Thursday in March, I visited my mother. We sat on the porch of her apartment in Queens, watching the streets glisten under gray skies. She still wore the same navy sweater I remembered from high school, the one with the threadbare sleeves and tiny coffee stains. I handed her a copy of the letter Robert had left. She read it silently, then folded it once, twice, placed it in her lap, and stared ahead. "I don't forgive him," she said. "I know," I said, "but I forgive myself," she added. And that was everything. Later that night, I opened my journal. Not the one he gave me, the one I'd started myself a year before, when therapy felt like a lifeline and not a chore. I wrote, "I am not what he left behind. I am what I chose to become, in spite of it. And that choice is mine every day." In the end, there was no dramatic courtroom showdown, no emotional deathbed confession that rewrote history. Just a man who left, and a boy who grew up anyway, a boy who became a man without him. And that man, he forgave, he let go, he built something better, not for revenge, not for redemption, but for peace. Real, lasting peace.